Hey, everybody. Seaman City Chatter Podcast. We're back. We're back live from the Opoka Palace. To my right, John Opoka.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Very
To
good.
my left, far left today, we've moved seats, but it's the one and only Tiffany. How's it going?
Going good.
We're continuing our campaign series here. We're in election season, and today we're joined by City Council Place 2.
That's right.
Correct me if I'm wrong,
No, you're right.
because I'll just get it wrong.
Place 2.
Walter Darrach, how are you, buddy?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Great to have you. Great to have you. So, been looking forward to you coming in here. We weren't sure that when we invited you on the show originally that we'd really have much to talk about. You were running unopposed at the time. Fast forward to past the filing deadline, and you've got a couple opponents.
Actually, as of today, I only have one opponent.
Oh, who backed
Okay,
out?
yeah, let us.
Brandon Padilla.
Oh, Padilla.
Excuse me. Got
Wills or a Y?
got the email this afternoon. So, one opponent as of today.
Okay, well, we'll just have to make note of that. We've been trying to look for him and reach out to him. I don't know if anybody from our team's been successful with that, but
No, not yet.
No.
I guess we'll.
Does he have a Facebook?
Yeah, it's Padilla Brandon.
Okay, yeah, we did
That's the
find
one-
that.
Well, we're not sure. Like, okay, that's
Right.
a gossip, but like, I mean, it's a good hypothesis.
So now it's you. You're the incumbent,
Yes, sir.
place 2. You've been on the city council for 3 years now, and your opponent is Mike Rogers, correct?
That's correct. Except just shy of 3 years. So, because of COVID, my term was
Started in
delayed 6
November.
months. So, instead of taking my seat in May, I had to take my seat in November. And then, of course, we still have a few months left of this current term.
Gotcha. So just going right into it. So what are your thoughts on your opponent? Didn't you have a relationship with him? He was, Tiffany, correct me if I'm wrong. What was the deal?
he was placed 2 before Walter, and he was placed 2. Like Mike Rogers was placed 2 for a couple terms, I think, right?
And we
At
talked
least
about
2.
this last week. You used the term.
I believe 3.
Oh, what I said was he all but kissed Walter on the forehead as he stepped down.
So that is true. So Mike and I, we have a really great relationship. We do communicate, and so what happened was I had an interest to run in city council, and I initially chose place 3. So back then that was Ted Miller, and
Right.
I ran that race, and I did lose that race. It's very, very close, but I lost that race. So from there I went to P&Z.
Yep.
And I continued to stay involved and work with the city and, learn the different council members that were seated. And, Mike and I, we spent a lot of time talking and, bouncing ideas off of each other. So when he got to the time for him to either run for re-election or step down, he said, I'm going to step down. I said, well, that's great because I'm, as you know, I'm going to run again. And he said, well, run in my seat then. So
Yeah.
I was lucky to run in Mike Rogers' seat. I didn't need any public endorsements. at
Did
the
you have an
time.
opponent at that time?
I didn't have an opponent, so it worked out. It did work out well. Tiffany's right. In that all but kissed him on the forehead.
Like there was no public
Yeah, there was no
endorsement.
public anything because at the time nobody filed to run against me.
Right.
So it kind of worked out that way, but. And since I've been on council, obviously we've stayed in communication, and Mike, actually funny, he took my seat on planning and zoning. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So let me back up just a little bit because there's a lot of people in the community, obviously, that know you, and then some of our listeners don't. So we were talking about this in the last couple episodes about how, a lot of the city council members are either business owners or have the time to dedicate this. Why don't we talk a little bit about what compelled you to run for city council in the first place and or just getting involved in the community of Midlothian?
Sure.
So you own a business. Correct
do.
me if I'm wrong.
Yes. So we'll start with I own a business. It's an aircraft maintenance and management company. So we send teams nationally and internationally to recover broken jets for whatever reason, wherever they may be, 24/7. That's the boring part of things. I live here in Midlothian, and up until 2017, I was in the county. So we got annexed in that last round of annexations.
Right.
And funny, my wife came to me and said, you like to do things, so being in the city, you could run for city council. And so I called a meeting with Justin Kaufman before I ever knew him. I just knew that he was, I think at this point, a 1-year councilman.
Yep.
And I said, hey, I met with him at Woodrow's at the time, Justin and his wife, and I said, thinking about making a run for city council. I'm just trying to get some information about what it's been like for you. I know you're new, and if you have any pointers or information for me. And he said, well, why don't you start at a board or a commission and see about getting involved there? And it just kind of worked out that, months roll pretty quickly. I think that was summertime before my first election, and you could pretty much go on a board in December, or you could file for city council
Right.
in January. So I did that. I filed for city council in January, and I ran a really, really strong race.
How many did you lose by? Because it was only like 200 or something.
I think
That was now
was
you
something real
and Ted
close.
Miller.
it was myself and Ted Miller, and I don't nobody sue me. Nobody call
No.
Cement City and say. But I was told there was a split of like 27. It was not much.
Oh,
And
I thought
then-
it was further than that. Okay,
No,
27
so-
is that's tough.
So funny thing, right? There was a big push. I think that this was the first election that we did the electronic voting machines and whatnot. So there was a push from some of my constituents that that were really behind me. They said, "Hey, maybe we should check that," because it's very, very close. So I went through the whole recount process.
Oh, we did a recount.
We did a recount, which, if anyone's ever considering a recount, you have to pay for it yourself as a candidate. So I did that, and we went through that process. And
That's where I'm getting the $200 because that's what it was.
Oh,
$200, not
that was my
200 votes.
question. So what does it cost to do a recount?
so that cost me about $1,600, $1,700 extra dollars. And
Okay.
I had to pay that to the elections office. But the
Is
funny
that just to
thing
pay their time to recount it all?
Yes, so
basically?
there was several people that hand counted, and then the city secretary Tammy Varner was overseeing the whole thing, and it was a big deal. And then I lost 2 more votes in the process, so it went the way that it went. But it's funny because
Well, if they had already declared Ted the winner, you had nothing to lose by recounting
Yeah.
at all, except
Sure,
for
well-
$1,600.
so when you call for a recount, it holds the canvas of the votes. So it wasn't declared. That obviously we had the preliminary results, but then we went through that. And the big thing was it's
I'm just trying to think back to Florida and Bush Gore.
Oh, hanging chads. Were you a pregnant chad or a hanging chad?
Oh, I'm leaving that one out of it. But it's kind of whether you think you're going to win, you think you're going to lose, it doesn't matter. I know, you guys had Alan Moorman on a few episodes ago,
Right.
and he's faced some loss, and you faced some loss.
Yeah.
It's hard still to
Yeah.
face a loss, but I was determined. So I took my loss and I went back to work. I went back to work and I said, okay, well, and they, what else can I do? And they said, well, we need some help on P&Z. And I'm like, that's what I'll do. Let's go to P&Z.
Yeah. So, is there any type of, do you feel awkward at all? Is there any awkwardness with Mike running this race and, you being his successor to the spot?
So Art Perard said
He just
something-
needed a break, or?
I don't know. I think there was a thought that he might try some other things. I know he wanted a break at the time, and maybe he's gotten refreshed. Mike's done a lot of great things for the city.
And that happens. I can't imagine you guys own businesses or work jobs, and then, the city council's like having 2 jobs, I'm sure.
Without a doubt.
So-
For sure. So I can tell you, Mike's done a lot of great things for the city in his tenure of service, which I believe I think when we sat down last, he told me somewhere in the 2002 is when he started serving on some boards. And so he has an expertise and a view of the city of what it was 20 years ago and 30,000 less people, and he's navigated that. And I feel like, just me personally, that he passed the reins off, and I've worked really hard to take my position seriously and stay involved, stay engaged, and also honor his service up to the point where I took it over. And not be a radical departure and go on any kind of crusade, because what's made our city so great is the fact that we've had economic growth and diversity, and of course, everyone wants to be the last person in, but increase in population has provided for an increased tax base, has provided for retail diversification and options. So it's like a good and a bad growth, and you just have to find a way to get it all together.
And growth's inevitable. It's like we had some fun last Friday about 5 o'clock when the filing ended, and
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you got to see that episode. We called
We counted up the minutes.
mayor-elect, mayoral-elect. What's the proper term, Tiffany?
I think it's mayor-elect.
Mayor-elect Justin Kaufman at that point.
called
Yeah, we
him?
called
Oh
him
yeah,
on the
we
show.
called him and put it like we were like, oh, it's 10 minutes till filing. Nobody else has said anything. We're calling him at 5. We called him right at 5, and he had and waited until he got the email.
Yeah, he got the email
Did
while he
anybody
was on.
tell him he was on the pod? Like, hey.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
In fact, he was like, I'm going to call him, and I was like, you better like give him a little heads
Yeah.
up. He,
Oh,
and
he
he
knew.
said, I'm waiting for your call. So
Yeah,
like, he was good.
Yeah, so he talks about growth, and obviously he will be the next mayor of Midlothian, and he talks about growth, and even when Mr. Wayne Sibley was on the show, he addressed growth as quality, versus quantity, and I think that's important for the city. But who am I? But it is inevitable. We all want nice things here in the town. Of course, then something like that happens, and people gripe about the price of it sometimes. But actually, I think you and I argued over that one time.
Sure. Yeah, for sure we did.
But,
It's funny. So perfect example to what you're saying is like the Kroger development, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves Kroger. I'm a Brookshire's guy myself.
too.
I just like that smaller, slower scenario. And my wife, the other hand, she shops at Kroger, but Kroger anchored a whole smorgasbord, if you will, of different retail and food establishments, and it's become a staple and an economic staple in our community. It provides, incredible amounts of tax revenue, sales tax revenue.
Yes.
But on the flip side of that, people are like, well, 663 is a disaster. We don't want to, we don't want to make it worse. And then development past the Kroger area has become difficult for some people because there's that perception of we're just making a bad situation worse.
Well, 663 has always been a nightmare. Before Kroger was there, it was always an issue. People driving too slow, or
That's the biggest nightmare.
Everyone always had an issue with 663. Period.
My
But,
oldest son totaled one of my cars
yeah.
a couple years back there.
So
He's
like,
dead to me.
So I love the area. I just hate the architecture because I think
Yes.
they could have done a better job with that.
So that's actually a really good point, and that's the thing that I think that we can do better. And it's not a campaign sticking point for me, but I do want to bring it up. The best thing about development, new development, especially in a town where companies want to be, is they want to work with us. They want to be here, so they want to find a solution that's good for them and good for us. And sometimes it is, just like you said, you know what? It really just kind of looks exactly the same as what's in Grand Prairie, exactly the same as what's in Mansfield. How can we put the Midlothian stamp on that? And then if we had that ready and said, we like to see buildings that look like this, or amenities or layouts that look like this, those developers, they want to be good community partners, but it does take leaders to push that, to make that happen.
Yep.
So I asked Mr. Sibley this question. I'm going to give you the same question. Since you're the incumbent, you've been there for at least 3 years. What's your best decision that you feel that you've made, and the one that you regret the most?
Well, that one put me on the spot.
Hey, you said no holds barred.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Can we go to another question? Can I think about it for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure. Let's see. Now I have to think about it because I usually branch off of what you're saying. Jeez. Okay. All right. So we took 4 bonds.
Mm-hmm.
We took City Hall, the Safety Center. We're always doing roads, but then we did a rec center.
I actually know my best and worst.
Okay, go ahead. Then.
Way
Go
to
ahead.
spin this up.
Da-na-na.
Way to spin this up. So part of what I like to do, because I'm a business owner, and I do run day-to-day operations as I like process. I like policy process. Actually, we say policy, process, and people. That's what we do at our company. My best decision, I think, would be voting for the compensation study for the staff, and then pushing for a higher than the 50 percentile mark for where we wanted to land when we were done with adjustments to the compensation packages for our staff members. I think that's by far the best because we ask a lot of a very streamlined staff. Actually, I think, and again, don't sue me if it's not 100% correct, but we're about where we were about 100 staff members down from a comparable average city of our size. So we are running streamlined, and on a short-term basis, that is, you can do that, and that it saves money, and it's it's okay. But over a long period of time, that increases stress loads, that increases maybe things that get dropped or delayed, retention issues, etc. So that, I think, would be the best decision that I make, because we actually have been blessed to see an immediate improvement in some morale, and a lot of people have actually stopped me in City Hall or stopped me at different events, and they just say, I want to thank you, that's awesome. And then some department heads have said, we actually just hired 2 or 3 people. We're getting applications in on these jobs that have been dead because we've been able to raise the rate classification for that job. So that, I would think, would, for me, is the single best decision. And then I think probably, just off the top of my head, the worst decision, and I'll probably catch flack for this one, is the electronic message board for
voting no.
Yeah, so I voted no on the electronic message board, the billboard sign at the Access self-storage off the side of 67. And actually, I went into that council meeting having already, obviously it came up before.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is a non-issue. I don't know why this is such a big issue. We should be able to put a billboard up and advertise.
But it was a unanimous no vote, right? Not unanimous,
not.
it
was not.
it
Yeah, I
still
think
was
it was
voted no,
6.
right?
Yeah.
Isn't this the one we were talking about where the city was like, okay, you can do it, but we'll own.
No.
And the guy was going to put like $500,000 into this
It was
sign.
it was $350. He came back with, it was 20 foot taller.
Yeah, then he was
10
going
foot
to.
taller.
He came back and said, no, hello.
And there you go.
Sorry.
And that he'd raise it even higher or something.
Yeah, he made it bigger.
Are we talking about the same?
Yes, it was like 24% or 52% bigger than than we allow for electronic message boards.
Sure.
It was a billboard, which we don't allow anyways. It was taller than the last time he was told no. It was like everything that was just like, we would say no to this, definitely.
Right. So you're saying you wish you'd just let him do it.
So there used to be a sign there, and I'm not going to get into the politics
Right.
of how the sign came down and what he was doing or whether or not there's a permit. But basically, you have a property owner who was trying to make better something that was on his property, and the red tape got in the way. Fortunately for us, we can make a decision based off of the situation and the facts that we have. And in that, the owner of that property has committed to utilize it for the benefit of our own residents, small town businesses.
Right.
That's what he said, and he even agreed to defining and having in the ordinance what a locally owned business would be.
Right.
So he
Well,
left that up.
That's what it came down to, though, is what everybody was like, what does a locally owned small business mean? I mean, McDonald's is a chain, but like it's usually locally owned. I
Sure.
mean, Chick-fil-A is a chain, but it's locally owned.
Sure. So, and I'm okay with a McDonald's ad
Right.
and a Chick-fil-A ad if it's benefiting the franchisee that is the local
Correct.
resident.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going
Brad
to hate
Golden,
against.
yeah.
I'm not going to hate against. Hey, Brad. By the way, I'm not going to hate against Brad because he bought a Beef O'Brady's franchise and brought
Exactly.
it to Midlothian. He's still a businessman and he lives in our community.
Correct.
And
Well,
it
if he
contributes
doesn't
to-
live in our community,
Well,
Yeah,
where does
he lives
live?
in Red Oak.
well, let's say he lives in Mansfield or Red Oak,
I mean,
wherever.
So we.
Yeah, he definitely lives not in our community. He just works here.
Of
His
course, you guys
business
had to bring
is.
up the one that, you know.
But
you
his
guys-
business is.
Oh, so we did define it, I think, at the time as a resident of Ellis County and maybe,
I feel like it was Ellis County.
yeah. So,
That's what it went back and forth. That was like the big thing.
you know, and the concern was, you know, should he ever sell it? Then we're having to, you know, fight that battle if Clear Channel or
mean,
something like that. But-
Yeah,
Correct.
because he's. It's not like he's a spring chicken. I'm not gonna say he's gonna pass away tomorrow, but like it's not like he's a
Wow.
spring chicken.
She-
I
me,
mean,
Tiffany.
any of us. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but
Slide that on there.
there's that, and then like, what if he sells it? Well, I mean, he says he doesn't sell properties. Okay, that's fair, but like something could happen to make this change hands faster than we're anticipating,
Very
and then you're
much.
caught up in a well. He said, well, I don't give a crap because I don't have to.
Very much so, but for me, you know, it's funny because if I ever make a vote that is in disagreement to somebody who I'm usually in agreement with, I'll get a text message or something that says, "I thought you were for property owners' rights," you know, or "I thought you know, whatever."
Yeah.
Like I can't get it right 1,000% of the time, but I have thought about this a lot, and actually. Tiffany, you know, you and I sat down with your son because he
Yep.
had a school assignment about that very meeting.
Boy Scouts. Yep.
So my apologies. And I just thought that to go so far in advance and then try and make a decision to prevent something so far in the future through maybe multiple transactions
Oh, yeah,
of an
it's a lot
asset,
of-
it kind of seemed a little bit of an overreach.
Well, yeah. I'm still in the no camp on that board, but you know, you're right.
okay.
It is property owners' rights. However, all the people that bought around them that are going to get that light pollution at 9 p.m. in their window because it's bright as hell,
Well, that
they also have their own rights.
absolutely. So that would be
Shouldn't have moved here.
Would be deferred to our.
Well, they're apartments, so most people in Midlothian.
Definitely don't need to worry about that one. If you move in an apartment, I'm sorry, but there's some things you got to realize, and one of them could be lights, it could be sounds, it could be the highway noise, it could be the airport
Well,
above
I mean,
you.
it's 50-50
come on.
apartments, and it's 50-50 apartments because we're talking about right there by Lighthouse, right? Like the
in the general area.
in that general
Yeah,
area. So
that's
like
where it
it's
was
like
going to be, I believe.
houses on this side, apartments on this side.
Sure.
Right.
So, I got a question. Basically, you know, you've got your race going on, and there's not counting Justin's unopposed, but there's 2 other seats.
Sure, yes.
So how does the other candidates in the other races and the other seats affect you? I mean, do you just get used to working with who you're working with? Do you get along with everybody? Is it hard to deal with people? You know, how does the transition?
That was 3 questions, so
Yeah.
I'll let you slide on that one.
Man, I just throw them out there.
Rob
Question-
also can't count.
Question number 1. Neither can my trainer. We fight about that all the time. But so question number 1: how do you just work with whoever gets in there?
I mean,
Well,
how does it affect you? Are you like, man, I know I've got my own race, but you know, so and so's running, and you know, I don't really, you know, I've been working well with such and such, and he might lose, or
So I can tell you, when you have your own race to run, you're busy.
yeah,
You're very, very busy, and that is probably the one thing that, you know, everyone says they're busy all the time.
Oh yeah, you don't know it until you've run a campaign.
Exactly. I mean, ever since Mike filed against me, my phone has not stopped ringing. My meetings have not stopped. I mean, and then I'm still running the business on top of it. So I have a great leadership team there. And I just told them, I said, so we thought this was going to be, you know, unopposed, but at the 11th hour, I got an opponent. So now we're running a full campaign, you know, so it goes for me from, you know, just staying involved in the activities and just doing my duties as a councilman, but then also, you know, entertaining just so people know who's coming back in to, well, if you want to come back in, you got a lot of work to do. So,
Right.
So the other races for me are not as in focus for my day to day because they have their races too, and they can change at any time, you know, so it's hard for me to stay over there when I have to keep my eyes set over here.
right.
Right.
So, where do you? Okay, so I kind of started off with the bonds, but like screw the bonds now. It means we're not talking about those now.
All
Where do you see Midlothian in 10 years, and is it where you'd like Midlothian to be, or would you change something?
So I love that question because that's what gets me excited. So Midlothian, I think, either by what's on the ground now or what is already approved to develop, we've got tons of houses. So there's no question of like, what are we going to do with residential? Where are we going to put the next set of houses? Or we have houses on the books for the next, I don't know how many thousands of people. So the question is, how do you appropriately service those next 20,000 people that already have houses on the books to be built? So for me, the 10-year trajectory of Midlothian is economic development, economic diversity, community retail, and connection between the different areas in our community. And that takes a little bit further vision in the way we make our decisions, right? So what do I mean by that? No large-scale developer of a commercial property or, just anything from a storage unit to a trucking hub to a manufacturing facility, they're not coming here giving us a pitch of like, hey, we'll see what we can slide in. They're going to give us something that looks good.
Right.
And the question on this leadership team is everything looks good and there's space to put it here, but the question is it going to fit with that 10-year vision? And we have to be strong enough to say that doesn't fit, and we want to hold out for something better because we have a better plan for the integration of this land use to that land use to this land use.
The question I have is, okay, so right now we're very industry centric. There's some people that want to make Midlothian a tech hub.
Sure.
Where do you want Midlothian to go? Do you want some blend? Do you want to take some onus off of the industry? Do you want to keep going down that industry path? Do you think that there's some worth or value to that tech hub?
It's manufacturing versus tech, basically.
Well, it's not quite like that.
Well, that's kind of what she's saying. That's what I heard.
Yeah, it is, but yeah.
So I'm a blue collar guy, right? I believe very much in CTE. I believe very much in making money outside of college, and I think our county statistics prove that a lot of our workforce is that as well. So for me, we've got homes, which means we're going to have people. So how do we train the people that are going to be here, my kids, your kids, to take the jobs for the big facilities that will be taking up the last pieces of our landmass, right? So to me, tech hub is kind of I see that as a big fancy facility style, but not so many people, right? There's not usually want means less people, and that's served well. But one of the most I want to say amazing, but eye-opening experiences that I had was when I went to the Midlothian Business Park. It's so funny because when people hear industrial, and you can't blame anyone for it, but when people hear industrial, they think cement plants and steel plants. So
Right.
They think dirty.
Exactly. They think dirty. They think, the hot, ashy, steel plant and the smokestacks off the cement plant. But really, if you go to the manufacturing facilities that have been created at our Midlothian Business Park, it's clean manufacturing. It's sterile environments.
Right.
It's sealed containment of different ingredients.
And just we're talking dividend exchange, or are you talking down there by the railport?
So I'm talking down there by the railport.
Okay.
Yeah. So where like Synopta and Sunrider, those companies are, and that's what we're going to see in the next generation of manufacturing facilities. So if you've noticed, it's kind of funny if we get a few yes votes for storage units, what are we going to see coming to council? Storage units. It's not until someone starts saying no that, okay, now that wave has moved. There was a solar wave that came, then it moved. Then there was a storage unit wave that came, and then it moved. And we're I like to think we're on the tail end of the trucking and distribution hub.
Yeah.
I think we've approved what we want to approve in this
Yeah.
immediate time, and now our interest has changed. It's like, okay, so we've got this diversification that we're building into how we're developing the commercial side of our city.
Right.
Because that is a huge tax base. So if you go back, 30 years ago when some of our pillar families were looking for ways to grow our city. One of the biggest slights against Midlothian was the singular tax base users. So we didn't have a wide tax base. So our what do you call it? Our credit rating could only reach so high. So when you start to diversify how you collect or how many different pools you pull taxes from, your picture looks good. Now, financially, our city already has incredibly high marks, but there's, just like in any type of certifications, there's some metrics you just have to target to get, and one of those was diversification of
Right.
tax base.
So back to your specific seat
Sure.
and your next term.
Sure.
What would be the single biggest issue that you personally would champion for the next, 3 years?
100%
Yeah.
diverse economic growth.
There we go.
All right. We are getting very close. We got like 5 more minutes. We got to wrap it up.
What other hot button issues do you have?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't have any like. So if somebody came up to you and said, "What's the hill you're gonna die on?" versus the hill you're just gonna bleed on?
So I believe that
That's a good question.
Yeah,
like
thanks
that.
for the hard questions, right? So I believe that that change sometimes is painful, and change can be seen as controversial, and it doesn't mean just because it's different that it is bad. And what that means is we have a long-standing history of community and togetherness and safety. We have a great school district, and that is by far what brings families to areas.
Yeah.
So partnering with the school district and partnering with our industrial and now medical partners and different things to ensure as we develop that we are not losing sight of who we were and who we are. Because depending on what year you moved to town, your vision of what Midlothian was is different, right? So if you ask, if you go and you ask Tony Sanders, what Midlothian was, I'm fairly certain his name was on the original town chart.
I think
Town
there's a
rolls,
big
yeah.
difference between what you just said. Some of, like you said, the families that lived here or moved here 30, 40 years, even 20 years ago versus guys like myself that have been here, 5 years or whatnot. I mean, I didn't see Midlothian when it was 8,000 people or
It's hard to
10,000
relate
people.
to that.
Yeah.
What I see is a town that is leading the way in Ellis County as far as being that exclusive city within Ellis County. We do really well here. Most people, I mean, we talked about the average income is super high here compared to other
I
places.
did hear that. That was surprising to me. Yeah.
And the quality of things that we put in here, in my opinion, should be selected carefully and whatnot. I mean, but there are those out there, and I talk to them on a daily basis myself, that, I mean, they'd go back in time if they could
Sure.
and take away 15,000 people. And
Oh, Sean
Right,
says it
right
every
after
day.
they pull out of Kroger and they got their groceries and they have what they need to make dinner tonight.
yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Sean says it every day. He's like, I wish we could go back and have some breakfast at DT's. I'm like, that place died of cancer. He's like, I don't care.
I did like DT's
I
as
do-
nasty
I
as
do
it
remember-
smelled.
There's no redoing what's already here and what's already coming.
So
You
we
can
have
only
to be
deal with what
intentional
you've
about
got.
how we do it, for sure. So
Yeah.
I remember when I moved to Midlothian, it really felt like I was not in the Metroplex. You could cross the Mansfield Midlothian line and be like,
Yeah,
well, this just
immediate-
feels
yeah.
different, So making sure that as we do grow and as we bring in, just a litany of people and business and as the school district grows, that we stay connected to each other, because
Right.
that's what keeps us safe. That's what keeps us wanting to come back. That's what keeps people telling their friends and family, hey, come to Midlothian, come visit us. And people want to be here for that.
All right, my last question. When are you going to give the school district, the swim teams, their freaking natatorium? I'm kidding. I'm kidding because I know that I did not vote for a natatorium. I voted for a rec center. But when did we get in the rec center? It was 5 to 7 years when we voted for it 2 years ago. Are we still on track?
So,
Like,
3 to 5 years?
I think a better question is, have you guys really even had a conversation about it?
Oh, they're having conversations.
so we're having conversations, but I have to be honest. The number one priority is to finish the projects that
Yes.
have already broken ground, which is our city hall and our police department.
What's that timeline look like on those?
I believe we're on track for our 18 months.
18 months is what I
That's
heard.
I think
yeah.
we are on track for that. So, and there's a lot of moving parts in that, and we've had a lot of transition through COVID with our staff and our planning department. So we're doing really well. I have to give kudos where it's due. But as far as the rec center goes, there's not a timeline for it yet, but that doesn't mean that it can't get pushed up, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
All it takes is money.
well, that's always the
I'm
case.
kidding.
No,
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
I mean, I'm
does
saying
it
that
take,
tongue in cheek.
Does it take a land swap with the school board?
No.
The
Well,
school
no,
district?
it takes collaboration, right? So if the goal is to make it as useful as possible, and obviously the swim team came to our city council meeting at the last meeting, they're waiting for one.
Yeah.
So and we had parents stand up and say, we need to give this to the kids, and of course we need to give it to the kids, but we also need to give it to our community, right?
Right.
So our community has voted for the rec center, which is more than a pool. So we have to keep that in mind. But then also, it's not my job. Like Tiffany said, at this point, the vote was cast and the vote passed on all 4 bonds. Now it's my job to oversee how that happens and make it happen, because they've asked for it. They've authorized the funding for it. Whether or not I agree or disagree with any of the 4 bonds, it's
Right.
time to put those to work.
Yeah.
But now you have to ask me what bond I want. I heard that you've asked some people that.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the question. So that's literally our final question. Spoiler alert: you watched the podcast.
Well, no.
No, he said he heard.
Yeah.
So he's getting the gossip train. He's not listening.
Yeah.
Exactly. Question number 10: what is the next thing you'd like to see the city pursue bonds for?
So my favorite department, and this is funny, because they have the coolest swag, is streets, man. That Adam and his team, they're like the
Wait, they got swag?
dude.
What do they got?
If you want a city jacket that looks pretty cool, Adam's the one to hook it up. But I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, Adam. But that being said, everyone's always talking about police and fire and the hospital and staff that they see at City Hall. But the thing is y'all remember when we had that big freeze and we stood up that warming center and we were trying to keep our water plants online and doing things like that? It was those guys sleeping down at Public Works to keep the generators gassed up, to keep things going. So I kept bringing it up in our budget meeting or budget meetings at this last budget cycle. I'm not okay with trimming the budget. Every time we have to trim the budget, well, we'll just not build roads. We'll just not, I guess we're just going to have to put off the roads. Roads is what connects us. If it takes us 35 minutes and 3 accidents to get across town, we've got a problem.
Right.
So for me, my next bond, I want to see the city put up for a 14th Street exit off of 287.
Yes.
There you
I'd
go.
agree.
That one was
Yeah.
approved.
So, obviously we can petition TxDOT to do that, and we've had some conversations, and there's been some, well, it's too close to this, that, and the other, and look, exit 401B off 35 is a 180-degree turn and about 55 feet. So if that's an okay exit, we can find a way to get, access to 14th Street
Right.
off 287.
Yep.
Because what I'm fearful of is, with all the people that have moved into this area and the development along 663 and the development along 14th Street, the amount of traffic that backs up onto 287 in peak hours, we're going to see something happen there, and it's not going to be something that we want.
My only argument against that one exit is that it backs up to take 663, not 14th. But that is because people don't take 14th for whatever stupid reason. That doesn't mean I want y'all on 14th. That's my exit.
That's my quick cut through from
Yeah.
south side to the north side.
Yeah, it's mine too, because I'll take any of that development right there. I just take a right out of and take 14th instead of trying to cut across 663.
Yeah.
But not many people do it, so that's why it's okay now.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Well, we're closing up the podcast here.
You got anything else you wanna add?
getting yeah. Let's.
No,
anything else
I
you want to
guess-
talk about?
I'm excited. At first you're like, oh, you pulled an opponent, and no, it's your friend, but you can still be friends and run a race. I think
Yeah.
we've seen
So-
that in previous races.
And I'm glad you brought that up. And we've got plenty of time for me to get on my soapbox about this. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Literally, do you not remember her and I and Tim and I on extremely two separate sides of a battlefield over an election?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's my whole point. When that is over, we're neighbors, right?
Correct.
So,
Look,
I hope.
everyone has a different perspective of how they want to
Absolutely.
see the city run, and they get behind the select few individuals that take on the commitment to run, which is that's a big deal. But at the end of the day, it takes very different perspectives, and those perspectives coming together to work through the process to get the best product. Because if we get a council up there that's just rubber stamping everything, where are we going to end up, right? Good or bad? If we're rubber stamping, hey, we don't want to do anything, or we're rubber stamping, hey, we want to do everything, there's negatives to both. So we have to have honest, open, and clear communication across all viewpoints
Right.
to make the best decisions for the longevity, success of our community.
And that's just, I wish that more people could, grasp that concept. I mean, John and I in 2020 at the conference center wheeled up a monster truck,
I
and
saw that.
I went AWOL on Facebook of the Andrea Walton and Taya Kyle, and I've, weeks after that was all said and done, I sat and had a drink with Andrea. Still talk to her every now and again. I haven't talked to her in a while. She must be really busy, but
I think she's taking a step back, take some break.
yeah,
rest.
it's been a couple months. But anyways, her number's in my phone. I can text her when I need something, if I need something. I did obviously not support her in the election that she inevitably won, but nevertheless, she did win that one, and at the time represented my children that go to school in Midlothian. So
And we did
Your
invite her
children and
onto a
tax
podcast.
dollars. I'd like to point that out. It's your children and your tax dollars, because I don't got any children in MISD, but she represents my tax
true,
dollars.
yeah.
That's fair.
So everybody be good,
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyways, well, we thank you for coming on, Walter.
Hey, this was fun. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you'll have to come back.
It's my first podcast ever.
Really?
So, yeah. I
Yeah.
want to do it. Yeah.
Well,
Next time we'll have some fun with it.
yeah, we have a good time. And then
Yeah.
we'll you can come back on when you're not running for election, and we can talk about other things that don't have to do with campaign, and about your business and whatnot. But
That'd be awesome.
We can talk about what restaurants we want to see come to Midlothian and
All right.
how we want another chicken joint.
Oh, God.
Real quick, I lost 60 pounds between my first loss and my first win. And so I like chicken. I'm just saying.
it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you for coming on, Midlothian. I hope this was informative. And you've got a campaign Facebook page, Walter Darrach,
do.
for Midlothian Place.
It's been up there. I've had it for a number of years, right? So that's how the residents have been sending me messages, to date. So
if you need to get a
I
hold
think
of
it's
Walter-
it's Walter for Midlothian. So
We'll put
Facebook.com.
it in the description of this podcast. And if you have any other further questions for Walter, just hit him up on Facebook.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Y'all
Thank you
take care.
guys, and we're out.
See ya.